I have been asked to show how I design a segmented bowl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this out. I need to make a salad bowl out of juniper for the lady that gave me that 11-foot juniper tree. So that's what I've started doing already. I've got the stuff laid out. So check this out. For the bottom ring, it called for 2 inches wide on the pieces. So before I mill these and cut the angles, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this veneer and I'm going to glue it to the bottom of this piece. And like on 3, I only have to keep this in place for about 20 minutes before I can move on. And I'm going to use my bench to help me clamp it down. And then once I take it out of the clamps, I'll trim it. Went on just cause. And I will repeat this process for all of these, gluing veneer to the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I've got this distance set for 1.999. Relatively almost 2 inches, and I used my vernier calipers to do that. So I've got that distance set up, so that will be the long length of my segments. So now I can move this down. The fence is locked. I can move this down into position. So I've got that tight. How do I cut these here segments? I use my Craig miter gauge. It's very accurate, and it even has pinholes for the right angle. Okay, so now that's dead right at 10 degrees. Okay, this is a thin piece, so I need to get rid of that. So see, now I've got that where I want it. So to do the next angle, I don't want to come down here this way. I flip it over. You want to make a line on one end of the boards, and I'll show you why that is when we go to put it together. So I made the first cut. Now to make the second cut, I flip it over, push it down here to the stop block, and cut. Now when I measure this, it should measure at 1.99. So I need 18 of those. So now I flip it again, go to the stop block, 14. 16, 17, 18. So now I've got my 18. So what do we do now? Well, we'll go over to the workbench in a minute and I'll show you. Okay, once you get that done and bring it over here. Now I need to sand the fuzzies off. I haven't done that. I have a sanding block with 100 grit sandpaper on it that I use I'll just run these over it and sand the fuzzies off. Once you get that done, you put it in here and make sure that everything sits right. And the reason for the marks on one side of the board is so you stagger that every other one. So mark on long side, mark on long side, mark on long side, etc., with the ones in the middle with the mark on the inside. That should counter any deviation that you might encounter on the saw or with the saw. Such was not the case with this one. Every now and then, I don't know, I either let a piece slip or something, but it happens. And you can see, I'll put it over here, you can see, I've got a gap here. So what do you do when you get a gap? Well, it's not the end of the world. It just takes a little longer. What you do when you get a gap, you back your clamp off a bit, and you put a dowel in here at half of the ring. So you put a dowel on each side. That will enable this thing to clamp up in 2 good half moons. When you tighten it down, there aren't any gaps. Everything is nice and tight. But this is going to be off just a little bit. So what do you do there? After the glue sets up, I will take these over to my big disc sander and I will sand that flat. I've got the glue on it. I've got it in the clamps. Get it tightened up. Everything's nice and smooth. Sometimes you have to persuade it just a little bit. I want this bottom nice and flat. And what I forgot to do a minute ago was cut the veneer to go in the middle. So I got those cut and I got those glued in. Now I will let this sit overnight and I'll come back in the morning and we'll sand both of these flat and glue that together. Okay, I have refit my old table saw sled for my old Delta contractor saw to my Powermatic. I don't use it very often, and I know this isn't square now. However, the blade is true to the table itself, and I have my protractor, my digital protractor here. I know it's accurate because I checked it against my big 30-degree triangle, and I have this set at 30 degrees. So now I have milled these pieces up. I have two of them. I've milled these up and I need to put me a block on here that will let me cut these at 30 degrees. So basically I'll be cutting like so, and I'll be gluing these back together to make chevrons. This is oak, some wood from Asia that was that were the slats of a baby crib, and a piece of figured walnut. So let me get that all set up and I'll come back. Okay, I've got this set up now. I've got a stop block set up over here to give me an inch. When I line these up, I'll make sure it's all walnut. If the walnut is even, that way it'll be fine. Now, if I make this the feature ring, just using these pieces, I have 11 segments. So what that tells me is I didn't make up enough material. I have plenty of oak, I've got plenty of thin walnut, I've got plenty of stock. I just didn't want to have to make any more up. Why? Because I'm lazy, y'all know that. Alright, when I figure something out, I'll come back. And I milled up some more wood for the chevrons. I've got them all in the clamps. I've got a total of 18, which is good because that's how many segments I usually use. Why 18? I don't know, just because I like it and it's simple. So once those are all done, I'll come back and we will trim them square and cut the angles on them and we'll start gluing it up. Okay, I'm going to use my Craig jig because I know it's square, and I'm going to cut these off and then make sure everything lines up, and I'll set a stop block and cut the bottoms off. And I think it'll be okay. Now let me get set up and I'll trim the bottoms and we'll see what we look like. Okay, stop block set up. Still may have to trim. There's no may. I'm going to have to trim some of this top off because some of this material isn't as thick, and that's all right. That one so far is the shortest. I'll use that as my gauge. So what I'll do is I'll move my stop block again. And when I'm set up for that, I'll come back. Okay, I left a little bit of a fudge factor because once I get this ring glued up, I'm going to have to run it through the drum sander and take some thickness off, and I can always cut any slack off once I get it on the lathe. Because there's not much, maybe a millimeter. What, Billy, you mean you didn't plan all this out ahead of time? No. Flying by the seat of me britches, as always. Okay, next thing I need to do, I've got my blade set at 10 degrees. 10 degrees this way, it reads 80 this way because it's a left tilt blade. It was 90, now it's 80, that's 10 degrees. And I trust this Wixie gauge. It's always been pretty accurate. So I'll get a stop block set up. I'll get my fence set up and I'll run it through this way. And then what I will do is just on the outside that these may be that my angle may be just a little bit off. What I think I'm going to do is I'll make the first cut on this side, and I will flip them over and make the second cut on this side. That way I know that both of these sums will be where they need to be. So if this accidentally happens to be, say, 9.96 degrees, this side over here would be 10.04 and make up the difference. I don't know if that makes sense to y'all, but I get it. I put a pencil mark across the face of each one of these. That way I'll know which side I cut first, and I won't get confused when I flip them over. This is going to give me a ring that is just over 10 inches. Without further ado, put my dust mask on, turn my extractor on. Now I'll turn all of these upside down. Now if I did all of these right, like I said, if I did all these right, this will make a perfect circle. Well, got off the phone and forgot I wasn't recording. So, like I said, if I did this right, these will go in with no gaps. And I have the slightest little gap on this one. So what I'm going to do, this one's upside down, that might be part of the problem. You look, it's pretty much gap free, and I'm happy with that. Let me get this over to the workbench. I'll take the clamps off, put some glue on all of these, and glue it up, and we'll be ready for going on next week. I think this is going to look pretty cool. Yeah, I've got all of these glued together. I tapped them down flat with a hammer, put the clamps back on, no seams. We'll set this over here and let it dry at least overnight. I may not be able to get back to it till Monday. This is Saturday afternoon. And we'll come back and we'll crew this up. This is the top of that walnut hollow vessel or hollow form that I did several years ago that I recently cut back and cut down because it was, see how thick it was just way too thick. So I cut the top off and made it a big bowl, and now it's really pretty. Well, this is going to be the top of this segmented piece that I've been working on. So I'm going to true this up. I'm going to hollow this out some, staying clear of the jocks. I just want to thin it down some. I'm going to cut this back to get rid of this flat spot so it'll be nice and round, and then I will hollow it out some and thin it out, because right now it's about 3/4 of an inch thick right here. So I've got my dust mask on, face shield on. That may give you a little better view. Standing out of the line of fire, about 1,000, cutting left-handed. I'm not going to worry about the shape of the top right now. I will do that after I get it all together. Okay, I'm going to leave this about this thick for now. Now, what I want to do is sand the inside of this up. Alright, that's 600, that'll do. Nice and soft and smooth, looks good. I'll hit this real quick, make sure it's flat. This is ready for that center ring when it's ready. Or my feature ring, I mean. Okay, I'm going to try to have this make sense if I can. This is that top piece of walnut that you just saw me work on the bottom of, or the inside of. And so I've got it something like this right now. It's a little wider out here. I'll make that thinner once I turn it around, but that's about where I am. This is not drawn to scale. That's actually 2 3/4 inches. So it actually comes out about an inch past that. It's 2 3/4 total. So it's to about here. And that's okay, because all that's waste. It'll give me a good glue joint down in here. So that's this ring right here. It's the next one I'm going to glue on. I'm going to glue it to the piece of walnut. This is our feature ring. So I've got this drawn up. While I'm letting this glue up or set up, what I will do is I will start milling this next segment. And so for this one, I'm going to use Sipo, walnut, and big leaf maple. And I'm going to lay it out in the pattern so that it comes down this way. But what I'm thinking, because this is all ash juniper, this ring here, we got walnut, all ash juniper, my feature ring, which is oak, walnut, and rubber wood, and the bottom ring is going to be solid walnut. The ring just above that is going to be ash juniper. So I may only have 3 rings in here, but they'll give me a design because I'm using 3 woods. So for 18 segments, 3 goes into 18 6 times. So there will be 6 pieces, or 6 segments of walnut, 6 of Sipo, and 6 of big leaf maple. Each cut 10 degrees, and then I'll glue a ring together. But I need to come up with some dimensions, don't I? I open my segment calculator, and 18 sides, outside diameter 10, final ring thickness 0.25, no decorative inlay, and calculate. 1.85 inches is my outside length. 1.851 to be exact. So if I take my vernier calipers, that should give me 1.851 or close enough. Let me get 6 pieces of each of these cut up to the right length and width, and you'll see what that looks like. But first things first, we're going to put some quick and thick on here. Rub that around good, make sure we get a good seal, and it looks like we got a good joint. So that will be ready for me to glue the bottom segment on. I've got this thing held on with 2 little dabs of hot glue. That'll come off easy enough. When I'm ready to come back over here, I'll pop that hot glue off, pull the plate back, flatten that surface off on the inside, and I'll glue my feature ring on. Okay, so 0.818 is just over 13/16, because 13/16 is 0.812. So I've got this set at 27-30 seconds. It should give me enough to get 6 segments of each. So when I get set up to make that scratch, I'll come back. Got my slant set at 10 degrees. I haven't set my stop yet. I want to make a mark on these. And since I'm going with different woods, if I was using all the same wood, I would just, like I did before, cut, flip, cut, flip, cut, flip, cut. That way I know if this isn't exactly right, cumulatively it will be. But because I'm pairing it with other wood, I don't necessarily want to put top and top together. So I'm making 2 marks. There's no play there, that's perfect. So I'm going to move my stop block back down here, tighten it up. This is tight, and I need 6 of each. So the first thing I'll do is I'll make my first 10-degree cut. Or if I'm going to need it, if necessary, if I've got gaps, what I'll do is I'll glue each half together with spacers. But it should not be necessary. And I'm going to try this quick and thick again. And these being butt joints, this is the weakest joint in woodworking. But since these rings are glued together, long grain to long grain, it really doesn't matter because that will hold it. Alright, make sure all these are pushed out where they're supposed to be. All right, now we let that one set up until it dries, and we'll see, and we'll run it through the drum sander. Let me get set back up over at the lathe, and I'll come back. Okay, I'll mark this up with a pencil. We'll sand it up, make sure it's nice and flat, and it is. I'll go hot glue my feature ring to this thing in 2 places, and I'll come back. I've got my quick and thick on there, so we'll bring this up, give it a little spin, make sure it gets all over everywhere, tighten it up a little bit more. And what I want to do is I want to try to line these vortices up, or the apexes, with my centerpieces as best I can. Alright, now we'll let that set up for a little while, and here in a little while what I'll do is I'll come in with this still chucked up. I'll come in here and I'll start working some of this surface over, and after I pull this back, then I'll detail the inside, and then we'll go to the next ring. Okay, I'm going to try to stay out of the camera. I'm going to start working on this and try to work it somewhat around. Dust mask on, face shield on, dust collector on. About 720 RPM. It's a little out of round, but not too bad. Yeah, I'm going to sand the rest of that up. I got it relatively round. I'm scared of how thin I am down here. Really, I am. Let me hit this with some black C8s. I'm about a 1/4 inch right there. So I can't go any thinner right here, because right inside here I'm right at a 1/4 of an inch. But I can cut this out tomorrow after this dries. After this seam dries good on the inside, I can trim that out easily enough. My problem is right down here, I'm already at about a 1/4 of an inch. I can't really afford to go. Yeah, I'm at a 1/4 of an inch right there. I can't go any thinner. Do a little sanding while I'm at it. So, now it's time to let glue dry. Okay, now I'm going to cut this ring out. And I'm trying to stay out of the way of the camera, but I need to see. Alright, time to sand this up in here. ready to put the next ring on here in a minute. So I want to hit this with some sanding sealer on the inside. Now I can put this on. I would say that 180 on the inside, not that. I think I need more. And give it some protection from what, I have no idea. Alright, I'll let that dry for a little while and then I will come back. But that'll give you some idea of what it's going to look like when it's done. Put these two rings on. So we'll bring this up here. Spread this around good. Clamp it down. And again, I'm going to let this dry overnight before I do anything with it. Okay, I'm going to go back to shaping the outside and then I'll move to the inside and just make this round and shape the inside in here until it's about 3/8 of an inch, a quarter maybe. I'll just keep doing that as I go down. It's close, it's not quite there yet. Alright, that's 120, that's smooth enough for now. Now I will come in here and put a curve in this piece. That's 120, looks pretty good. Now it's time to make another ring. And it'll be the same kind of ring as this one. 6 pieces of walnut, 6 pieces of African mahogany, and 6 pieces of maple. Let me get set up for making that and I'll come back. Okay, except for the bottom, I've designed the rest of this for these next 2 rings. This is 10 inches here. That gives me a segment length of 1.851, which is the same one we cut a minute ago. But this time it's going to be 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inches thick. This one will go back to 1 inch with an outside length of 1.675, another beech nut ring or beechwood ring 1.587, and then the bottom will be 3/4 inch. So nice tight joints. I don't see any light in between any of them, so nice and flat. So I'll get this one glued up. And the next smallest one looks good, no gaps. I'll get it glued together. Okay, got these glued up, they're nice and tight. Now I'll let them dry for a little bit. And this one's done, but it's trying to bow because it's so thin. So I'll put this on here. And then in a couple hours I can take it out. An hour or so I can take it out. Okay, made some marks on here, let's flatten it up. So when I come back in the morning, I will run those 3 rings through the sander and start gluing them up. And then I can turn the outside, sand it up, and then be ready to glue the bottom 2 pieces on. Okay, I'm over at my other lathe. I've got that plywood disc for the bottom cut. First thing I want to do is turn this around, and then I will make me a mark on here for where I want to cut the center hole. So let's get it round first. Give me a mark right there. Okay, that's where I'm going to cut through. So now I'm going to glue the bottom juniper ring to this. I'm just trying to centralize this glue so it doesn't drip off onto the lathe any more than it already has. I got to clean that up because this glue has water in it, and that's not good for bedways, even though my bedways are protected with wax. So I'll leave this, I've got plenty of pressure on it. I'll leave this set up for an hour or so, and then I will pull this back, flatten this off, and glue the beech ring on. See how flat this is. Well, that got sticky in a hurry. Alright. And after that's dry, we'll come back and flatten it off and put another ring on, but that's not going to be until tomorrow. Okay, while I've got this to this point, I'm going to start rounding this. This is the bottom. First thing I'm going to do is get this round. Now that's round, but it's got to be cut back some to get to the beech. But before I do that, I want to smooth this over into there. So it's time to glue the last ring on. It's looking pretty good. I'll finish hollowing the inside, flatten this face up, and roughly start on the shape over here. But the big thing I want to do is get the inside diameter of this when it's done to match the inside diameter of what I've already done over there on the big lathe. Now we wait for glue to dry. Okay, these are all glued up. It's time to shape the inside and I'm going to make the outside round as well, but the big thing is I need to get this diameter the same as the diameter on the other half. I don't know if you can see that mark, but the inside one is where I need to go. I'm going to use my skew like before. Okay, that's 2 coats of sanding sealer, which is what I've got on the inside of the other one. But Billy, you don't have anything right there yet. You're right. I don't. Flatten it up. I don't see any gas. So now we let this dry overnight, or at least for several hours. I wasn't going to do anything on this today, but excitement has the better of me, as often happens. And this is running fairly true, so I'm just going to try to marry these down as best I can. Well, I've got the bottom glued on. It's going to be kind of short and squatty. It may not look very good. It may be too short for how wide it is. But we'll see. I'm going to start rounding it off. This was round when I did it, but boy, it has moved. I had not intended to put a flare bottom on here, but it doesn't look like I'm going to have much choice. Well, no, I have a choice. I can still keep going once I turn it around or take this back. Looking at this shape, I'm thinking it would actually look better if this was the top and this was the bottom, because looking at it this way, it's kind of funky. Anyway, that's all I'm going to do for today. I may do some sanding on it, but y'all have seen sanding before. I had to do a little filling, so now we're going to do a little sanding. Okay, that's 600. Get some mylons on there. I'll have to redo this when I glue the bottom in, so I'm not going to worry about it too awful much. I think it's going to be pretty, and it's going to look like that. This will be the bottom. I'm going to cut this top out, the bottom out, make that the top. I just think it looks better this way. Alright, so I'm going to give that a few minutes to dry, and I'll knock it back with some Scotch-Brite, and then we will pull this chuck out and start cutting the top out. Bowl steady up here because I'm going to be cutting that way in a minute. I don't want the plywood visible, so I'm going to cut it back some. I'm glad I left this hole as small as I did. I'll try my best to stay out of your way. Most of this is nice and smooth, if you remember. I just need to hit right in here. I'm I'm only taking that inside to 320. I'll blow this out and put some islands on the inside. But first, I need to shape this top because I think I want to angle this up just a little. Alright, I'm going to let this dry and I'll come back and put another coat on, and then we will knock it back with Scotch-Brite and we'll turn this around and then I'll start making the plug for the bottom. Okay, I've got this in the cold jaws that I had it on earlier. This is rounded. I need to make it more flat, but I don't want to remove too much material at all. I just need a good flat for the glue. Nice thing about having two lathes is you can do this. First thing I'm going to do is make this round. I decided to use African mahogany for the plug since there's already African mahogany in the piece. Cut me a flat. See? Perfect. I'll get some glue in it. Okay, we'll put this in here. Grain's running that way, so I want to match that up. Let this dry for a little bit. I'll keep it clamped up here for about an hour. Then I'll put a soft touch in and we'll start finalizing this bottom shape. So after that dries, we'll come back and we'll finish the bottom. And then I can start spraying the finish on this. I need to true that up because it's not. That's pretty. I think it will do. Knock that back with some Scotch-Brite when it dries, and tomorrow I'll burn my logo in the bottom and we'll finish it. Okay, so here it is. I still need to put the final finish on it, and I will do that after I get this next part done. It's time to end this video and get it up, but it's got 2 coats of myelin sanding sealer on it. And so you can see pretty much what it's going to look like. I'm very happy with it. I'm glad I decided to turn it over. I don't think it would have looked as good this way. I've still got to engrave my logo in the bottom as well, but all in all, I'm very pleased with it. Now, in the next video, I will make the lid. It's going to be a segmented lid. And I will also make a finial, and I'm thinking about making it segmented too. I just don't know yet. So come back for the second part of this and we'll get it topped off and finished off, and that'll be that. So for the lid for that segmented box, I'm basically going to take these offcut and glue them up, but I've got to do some cleanup on them first. and I may put some thin pieces of African mahogany in between them. I just don't know yet, but that's what it's looking like I'm going to do.